So, hello everyone, thank you for joining us. We would like to welcome once more to a CE3C Encontros Ciência. We are quite pleased to have today as our speaker Professor Maria Amélia Loução, who I thank in advance for being available to share with us her work. And her book also. You can leave questions during the chat, during the talk in the chat, or at the end you can ask Professor Amélia directly. Professor Amélia will be presented by Professora Cristina Mágoas, to whom I now give the floor. So I would like to thank you all. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone, and we can see from the number of people that is already here. It's a huge pleasure to welcome and to present our Professor Amélia. The students, and I had the pleasure to be your students. I'm sure that all of them will agree with me that Professor Amélia was a mark to all of us and an example. If we are what we are, it's due to people like Amélia Martins-Loução that devote completely her life to ecology, to biology, to her students, and to the Faculty of Sciences and the University of Lisbon. And this is why her curriculum starts with a PhD in a very famous tree at the moment, when we consider the climate change, that is the carob tree, Ceratonia siliqua. She was probably one of the first persons to study the mycorrhiza, to study the interactions of these incredible species with the soil. And then along the years, she built up a group of people in ecology, in plant ecology, where of course that she was the boss. And she, during this time, she was the head of an old former research center that we have, where all the people that were working with plants were there. She's, of course, a full professor in the botany department, where she was the president. Then, of course, with the responsibilities and since her activity and her enthusiasm, she was also invited to participate in numerous panels, in the numerous projects. And of course, she went up also in the management. So she was the president of the botany department, but she was also for several years the Vice-Rector of the University of Lisbon. But her love was the botany, the garden, the botanical garden, and where she was the director for incredible years, where she really motivate and develop the research, the dissemination. And she has been always so interest on dissemination, and she did a master in communication. And we are very proud that I remember quite well when she defended the master thesis, because everyone says, well, Professor Amélia is going to defend the master thesis. And we were, all of us, I remember quite well afterwards. And also she showed how at the same time she's so humble and she modest, that a person with her curriculum, she was doing this master thesis in communication. At the present time, she is the head, the director, the president of the Portuguese Ecological Society, with a big responsibility, and everyone that is looking about the activities of SPECO can see the dynamic of Professor Amélia, and of course that she's a researcher, a top researcher, still a researcher in the C3C with very important contributions. She's going to speak with us. The talk, it's about global risks and biodiversity. She's finding time in the writing and the participation on the media. She's quite frequent. She's writing to Público, and also books for children. And recently she published a book, I don't know if it was 1 month ago or something, exactly the topic that she's going to talk today. So it's very difficult to talk about your CV. Everyone knows you, and it's a big pleasure to welcome you to this this moment in our Encontros de Ciência. Thank you very much, Professora Amélia.
Okay, thank you also for this invitation to be here. For the words, just only a small addition that I realized that this year it was open the possibility to make a PhD on communication. I don't know if I'm going to enter or not. I will try, but just for you to know. So it's only a small thing. I really don't know how to stop, but it's my way of living. I'm sorry to that. So to start with my presentation, I will share now. So I gave the name of my book written in Portuguese, Global Risks and Biodiversity. So I would start with the history of the book back into 2020, where I've been invited with the following keywords: climate changes, high temperature, and of course, if I want, biodiversity. And then I thought that the best approach would be about the global risks we are facing, including the biodiversity loss, of course. We are, in fact, in an ecological culture, a wave of ecological culture, where the relationship between man and the environment is much more defined in terms of economic and political limits of our resource exploitation within the Earth. And I have always with me different inspired books that together with some present days, some of the present day environmental questions, just these ones: are we going to stand higher temperatures? Is our life being affected? How can we solve the energetic problem? Everything connected with climate changes. And this led me to think that would be what could be my role after retirement, that I'm already retired, and without a proper place in lab experiments. What could I do? Being a grandmother with 3 grandchildren, I felt the need to communicate fancy stories in order for the young people to view in the top of mountain, the big picture of all our Earth. So I divided the book in 3 parts. The first one is the risk of climate change, and then I thought why people are so worried about energy. Everything is energy. So immediately I come back to previous idea in taking the lead of the exhibition Earth's Adventure in a Planet in Evolution, that stayed for 10 years in the Natural History Museum. And of course, the origin of life had 6 big conditions to appear in the Earth: a continuous and powerful source of energy, our sun, a specific chemical composition of the Earth, water in liquid state, existence of other giant planets that act as barriers of other celestial corps, and last but not least, water in abundance, together with the existence of an atmosphere. So we must then understand that all cells for living follow the second law of thermodynamics. Within their insulating membrane, cells can establish and cultivate the order, and putting the disorder and the chaos in their surroundings. And then we could think as following Olivia Judson, the 5 periods of energetic dependence of our life evolution. So the first one, it is the geochemical energy, suggesting a patchy local distribution of life at this time in Earth, where oxygen were present only in traces. So then appears solar energy, as I tell to my grandchildren, the expert bacteria that know how to look and use the sun energy. And of course, this gave rise to the oxygen perturbance and also the difference of atmosphere. But use of oxygen as an electron acceptor appears afterwards due to the need of adaptation of this new atmosphere. And through respiration, cells learn how to use oxygen as an electron acceptor and releasing much more energy for the metabolic aspects. So these are independent cells, but afterwards appear the flesh, the food that we call now, that are another source of energy. And this gives rise to the previous animals. And the last period, it was fire. Fire that, of course, needs a source of ignition that was common in the beginning of Earth through the lightning strikes, but needs oxygen for one side and also fuel that only appeared afterwards during evolution of land. You can see here the different appearance of the different arrangements of geological structure, and only around 600 million years ago or 540, the plants have reached the land, have been adapted, and around 500 million years ago, forests turned green the land. And between 360 and 300 million years ago, the forests were buried in Carboniferous era, giving rise to the present combustible fossils. I mean, the fossil fuels that we now know how to burn and to turn into energy. So during our evolution of Earth, we could see that in a way, when humans appeared, and particularly when we start the Industrial Revolution, it has been rising and stabilizing of a global climate system due to this immense rise of atmospheric CO2 concentration. And this was what, during my era, it's very impressive for me to put this graph, because it just in my lifetime that all these things appear. So my generation, and according to Martin Rees, of course, that it proclaims on his book, it gives rise to a conscience about the things that we have done to our biosphere. And it agreed in this moment, the Geological Society, to think in the definition of a new era, that is the Anthropocene. So the second part of the book is the risk of food production. And this is why this is a risk, because in a way, this can justify all the changes in the use and the abuse of energy. The risk of food production give us and lead us to, in ecological terms, to see the pyramid of energy, where we have the producers and the consumers. And between them, from step to step, we can see that there is a dissipation of it, because there is a loss of energy. So photosynthetic organisms, either in land or in ocean, are the producers, and besides energy, they also need the sun energy. They also need nitrogen, because nitrogen as well as carbon are the raw elements of all organic molecules, from producers to consumers, including man. And when we look at the nitrogen use evolution, we can see this curve. You can see here two curves. One in green is the rise of population, world population, another in red, that is fixation of nitrogen. And you can see that they are together. If there was not the possibility of nitrogen fixation, the number of people in Earth was the dashed line, green dashed line. And these were due to two men, Fritz Haber, that you have here in picture, and Carl Bosch. Both of them received the chemical Nobel, one in 1910 and the another one in 1930. And they were able to make in laboratory what soil bacteria does in the soil. Fritz Haber was able to put in the lab, fixate in the lab molecular nitrogen enriched in the atmosphere, present in the atmosphere, as ammonia. And in that moment, it revolutionized everything with the fertilizer accessibility and availability for all, particularly after Carl Bosch make the industrial process. So we started the Green Revolution, and in that particular time, what we were able is to make much more protein and much more food for people to be able to feed and then to appear. So we can say that agriculture has been domesticated. But with all this, of course, it was one of the best things that the 20th century gave us. But of course, it also turns to have enormous nitrogen impacts that in a way, the most part of people are not aware and sensitive enough, because nitrogen in the environment, in the atmosphere, have profound chemical interactions and affecting climate change, the air and soil and water quality, biodiversity and ecosystem services, and of course have effects also in health. So in this moment, the great paradigm nowadays is what is the most important to global warming. It's the car and the fossil fuels or the food production. We always forget the reality that food production, and we need to justify the demand of food that we have today, but has also given rise to different disparities, because many people have very little, while others have too much, and particularly more than that, more than 1/3 of the produced food is completely wasted. So the challenge today is to know how to produce food with less fertilizer, with less loss of nitrogen and water, also preventing the loss of soil. That is something that the most part of people starts now to understand the importance, and also with much more food security, because this is one of other challenges that we have, this food security. But one of the economic threats that we face also together is to think on the dependence continuously on energy and nitrogen. And we are giving rise to this beautiful thing that is the greenish of energy, using crops for fuel or burning biomass. That is something that I, as you may see, I completely disagree entirely. So the last part of my book is talking about biodiversity and loss of this biodiversity. And the interesting thing is to see how during Earth's evolution, biodiversity knew to complexify and to diversify the genre, the species, using different strategies to occupy different niches. And of course, there were different extinctions the 5 big, as they call, mass extinctions are here represented. The last one, it is the dinosaur disappearance. But today, we have a much more extinction rate, more than the last 15 one, or 5th one, where we are disappearing a huge amount of animal genre, particularly amphibian. The loss of 3 plant species with seeds per year, and the projection is that we are going to lose 10 times higher than the current rate. More than that, we are affecting the type of animals that we have in Earth. If you think in terms of herbivores, probably we have so many or more herbivores that we had before, but now the most part of them are domesticated, are particularly for man use. And this is, as you imagine, in terms of wilderness, is a completely different thing. The same with our forest. This is an infographic that came yesterday or the day before in Publico, where you can see the land 10,000 years before till now, the disappearance of forest, world forest, also the wild pastures, and an increment of pastures made by man, and also everything, as you see, there is a disproportion of type of landscape that we had before, only thinking in terms of the benefit of man. And this is something that in 29, Johan Rockström has already proclaimed, that more than climate change, biodiversity is a huge problem that we need to face, as well as the disturbance that we made in nitrogen cycle. So the problem in reality is that we are living today in an egocentric world. We think that we are the supreme species, the most important one, and we can do, due to our development, science development, science increment, we can do everything. From this, we could see how we had possibility to fight this pandemic with the urgent development of these vaccines. So we are invincible, and we are a really energetic dependent species. We use energy for everything, and this give rise to polluted earth and of course to climate change. But we are also dependent on resources that we use for everything, for food, for paper, for wood, for oil, for making pastures and make more meat to the people. And this leads to deforestation and soil erosion in different ecosystems. And we also have another problem, the consumerism or consumerism that we all know our practical needs of cleaning with everything in plastic, but also the pleasure needs with balloons that appear, that goes to the beaches, and in this moment we all know that are islands of waste. And the need of make all the ecosystems similar in large areas, everything similar, identical, without knowing that when we clear up ecosystems, just thinking in our welfare or food production or other justified needs, we are not able to understand what we are really doing. When we clear up, we are affecting the diversity, the number of species that are in there, simplifying or breaking ecological interactions, simplifying all the things that could limit man actions, and of course losing partnerships and soil. And these non-visible guys, like the microorganisms in the soil, are important piece that we must not forget. And because of that, I have been writing this story to children to make aware to the youth that besides those bacteria and viruses that affecting our health, we also have non-visible organisms that will stay here even if there is something in Earth. They will stay here and are responsible for the life that we have today, and are responsible for all these ecological interactions that we are so much dependent and very important even for us, for our health. And preventing also ecosystems to establish all those ecological interactions, we are breaking all those services, ecosystem services, that we are so much dependent, and we don't give the real value that they have. For instance, the wetlands that the most part of people disregards or even don't care at all, they are able to give support, particularly the coral reefs or mangrove. They shield the coastlines. They can give us the provisioning, the food, some food, fish, many other things that we can take for our provisioning. But also, since they can store carbon and absorb and store water, they can regulate make the regulation of all our system, particularly climate. And also it can provide us cultural services, since with them we can create very good conditions for our health. So we need to preserve and know how to restore ecosystems. We must not forget that UNESCO said that we are in the decade of restoration. We need to restore our landscapes. We need to care our biodiversity, and particularly restoration is the word for those degraded ecosystems. This is something very important that people need to know, particularly based on scientific knowledge. And our problem nowadays is that policies are very common, saying that they can rule out, they can make everything through the rulings and so on, but they don't based on scientific knowledge to do the things. And we need more than that, our knowledge to be at service for the public, and particularly for all these aspects. So in a way, I think that this is my responsibility as a previous teacher and previous and present scientist, is to written messages through this book that just appeared, and also this one for children that I launched last year. It's a huge proud to my grandchildren, but also through video messages, through these two video that are available in Portuguese and in English and different other languages, particularly nitrogen one, to show up that we really need to be present, to try to increase the knowledge, the scientific knowledge of people, of society, in order to contribute for a better world. And thank you.
Nitrogen.
No, not this one. No. I stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Professor Amélia. So we have some minutes. I don't know who wants to ask some questions and talk a bit about what Professor Amélia just told us, and I open here the discussion. I'm seeing lots of applause.
Professora Amélia, já, Cristina, já, interessante antecipar.
Não, começa tu.
Tá bom. Bem, não vou falar sobre a professora Amélia, mas então, uma pergunta direta. Sorry, in English. It's about dissemination and climate change and everything else. What I think everyone found when we speak with some, especially children, they think the world is coming to an end soon. There are some other groups that are super technical optimistic and we can solve problems by techniques. But on the end, I mean, do you think dissemination could also follow a path of showing us possible futures that are not so high level climate change and big changes in land cover and so on, something that is more attuned to us, something like an intermediate level of possible futures for the common people, the common folks? Do you think this is a way to the future?
I think that it's the way for the future, because I believe that the people that know I think that the people that are much more when they have much more knowledge, they have much more conscience to have their roles in the society, and they can be much more care and activist to prevent some other barbaries, as I call, to the things that nowadays they make. We must not forget the position that we as Portuguese has had fighting against nuclear power, or even to fuel and oil extraction in Algarve. If people feel that something can be bad for them, I think that they need to know much better. They need to understand what is behind all these things, and because of that, dissemination for me is very important to do.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
One of the things that it's clear is that the teenagers and the young adults, let's say, you know, from 12 to 15, are the ones that are really now in the streets. They promote these climate strikes. So, and since we need the action now, how do you think that we can promote this activity and proactivity that we can see in these teenagers to the young adults? Because it seems to me that, of course, there is a work to do with young children, definitely, but the children with that age, it will be too late for what we need to promote now. And the teenagers do not vote yet. So we have an age problem, which sometimes are the ones that vote, maybe they are not so involved, and are the ones that really have the power at the moment to vote for those governments that really can provide the public policies that we need. How can you, what do you think?
Well, I see the Greta phenomenon. And I see all this march, Friday march towards all these fights. And of course they can't vote, but they have an important aspect, and they make too much noise, and the media and all these aspects, of course, most part of them, they don't know the scientific problem, but they need to be learned. They need to be taught about all these problems, and if we teach them, if we show them all these implications, I think that with their position, it's important for the mediatic and for the policies, because nowadays it's a wave. The people, the policy makers don't like to be in a disagreement, so they look for the mediatic aspect of the thing. And one of the things that they can't do yet, I hope not, is to quiet the youngest.
So I don't know if there was a comment from Professora Margarida Matos, congratulating Professora for the book and for the importance of this kind of books. I don't know if anyone wants to say something else.
Can I just, so basically, yeah, so I have 3 grandchildren, and sometimes I struggle to find a nice book that at the same time is attractive, it's easy for them to follow, and with messages that are very important, and this is one of them. And I think it's missing, so that's basically what I wanted to say. And basically, as in the continuation of Christina's comments, I think that the change is not in votes, the change is from the citizens top. So if the citizens are well aware, and that starts with the children, that can express the parents to have correct behaviors in terms of environment, that's where the change starts. So it can start from the very lower level of children. And I say that with pride, because my children, sometimes my grandchildren correct me for some things that I do, and they are already aware. Of course, the school is also very important. That's what I wanted also to say. But I think that at that level, it's like a commitment from family, from school. So it's, but anyway, it's bottom up. I think it's bottom up. I think it's not important that they don't have a vote in the elections, but they have a daily vote. And I think that's the main thing.
Eu não sei se posso intervir, mas há aqui uma questão que me preocupa particularmente. Por um lado, nós temos um discurso, este discurso que temos que ter cada vez mais, que é de facto chamar a atenção de todas as camadas etárias para este problema que é enorme e que é urgente. Agora, mas ao mesmo tempo estamos a incentivar todos os dias determinadas formas de consumo que vão ao arrepio disto tudo. E portanto, e os jovens, todos nós, e os jovens em particular, são muito atraídos pelo consumo de conveniência, pela facilidade, por estar já preparado, ou por estar já ali ao lado, ou por não sujar as mãos, seja pelo que for. E, portanto, para mim, todos os dias tenho esta preocupação pessoalmente e profissionalmente, e ainda não percebi como é que vamos atalhar caminho nesta área. Para ser efetivos, para ter consequências as que queremos, para ser efetivos na nossa prática e úteis. Gostava de ouvir a professora Amélia sobre isto. Desculpe, portanto, é uma lei em português, mas penso que todos nós entendemos bem o português, porque à exceção de uma ou duas pessoas, estamos bem. Não é? Quanto era isto, professora Amélia?
So I don't know if I understood very well what you want to comment. I think that it's how can we make a balance between what we can do and what is the response of both children and parents. And I remember one of the last projects, European projects, where I have been involved, connecting with informal education, and where people talked about the huge need to make this informal education both to children and to parents. Because the most part of those problems appear in these developed countries where parents were already very well have a lot of knowledge with a great academic background, and they only think on that part of the work, and they didn't care about anything else unless the things that they know, because it would be the most important thing. So in those developed countries, apparently, the most part of the societies with the huge academic background, they think that they are superior because they have already a background, and they know how to deal with, because they know. And this starts to be a problem. And talking with some teachers in schools, they always say the same. The most problematic children are the ones where the families, the parents, have much more knowledge because they don't care the other things. They have so much time occupied, they don't care about other simple things of this problematic world. So we are in a bias in a way. For one side, we think that the best is the scientific literacy of society for one side, and for the other side, we think that people, when they don't know so much, they are much more humble, they are much more open to know much more things and much more sensitive to the real problems that we are facing, although with many other problems that they also have. So at that time, they they told us to the people of the EU project that they started to make also some special courses for the parents. So probably we also lead to this, write to the parents and write and take or disseminate message to the children. They both need.
Thank you.
So, one last question. I don't know if anyone wants to ask or comment. No.
No. Can I just? Sorry, I said it before. So can I just add how much? I mean, I think that in school, and I'm thinking of primary school, and it's not my experience is small. So I have 3 grandchildren, but they are in a private school, so it's like in a modern system, so they are very aware of those important things, I think. But I'm not saying that that doesn't happen in public school, but I think that we should also have a word about the programs and about what the school is intending to do, because as Professor Amélia is saying, the children also educate their parents, but mainly through their experience in school. And so this is a triad, right? Children, school, and family, which is very important, and it should be synchronized. So how much can we have some proactive intervention in, for instance, school programs and projects? Because many schools already have like the idea of having a space where they do like, I don't know how Horta is said in Portuguese, but this is something that is very usual, right? That the kids are connected with earth and see how plants grow and how sustainable it can be. I think that the idea is there. The thing is that is it well taught and is it well developed? And I think that we researchers should have some word in that. And I don't think that we are very consulted, but I don't know if I'm wrong.
No, they are not so much, but they are really afraid. In a way, the teachers are really afraid to communicate with the researchers, because they are really afraid to show up that they don't know some things. Of course, there are differences, are different teachers, are different schools. Fortunately, they are not all equal, and depending on teachers. And my last experiences through the formation of teachers that I've been doing since I've been retired. I think that the teachers really wants to be different and be much more different. But again, the schools are very, very complicated, and it's very difficult to make a rule or to make a better organization, because they are also ruled out through an hierarchical paradigm due to their directors, and also through the rules of ministry. So I don't know. We need to make holes, like the water in a rocha.
Yeah.
Stone, in a stone, we can make, and we need to step by step dealing with the teachers by through different contacts in order to make some open mind both in teachers and in school children. This is my opinion. But of course, it's very, very difficult to write books and public, not write books. Write books, we have, at least I have the time to do that. But to publish, it's really difficult, very difficult. And you see in the most part of bookstores, you can see much more translated, very fancy English books instead of those written by Portuguese ones. So we have to do something.
So thank you so much. Once more, thank you for your presence in this Encontro Ciência, and we hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Deus, professora.
Obrigada.
Obrigada, professora. Obrigada, professora.
Obrigada.
Obrigada. Eu vou